Well, alright, welcome back to As It Should Be. Paul Bertolino here, and well, it's time for another installment in the Twin Album Covers series, and I think this is the third one so far, something like that. Not that the numbers count, but I think it's the third one. Now, for the uninitiated, this is Twin Album Covers is where I show you album covers that, well, have a twin, and I'm not talking about parody album covers. I mean, I'm not talking about, like, Meet the Beatles versus, Deface the Music by Utopia. I mean, that's an intended thing. I'm talking about stuff that maybe wasn't intended or wasn't openly intended. I don't know. Maybe they're rip-offs. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just completely different people getting the same idea, completely independent of one another. I don't know. But they're twin album covers, and you'll see what I'm talking about as we go along. Now, in the past videos, I've asked, and I will ask in this video as well, anybody who watches this who has any ideas, who thinks, well, what about this one? What about this one? Let me know in the comments, because I always could use suggestions, because I certainly don't know about them all myself, and people have definitely given me great ideas. Last episode I had some great suggestions from people who had viewed, from viewers, and I am actually going to begin this episode with a suggestion, sort of a suggestion from a viewer, from a commenter, and that is, okay, so a guy named, let me get my glasses here. This is a commenter by the name of Mordant Films. Shout out to Mordant Films. And now he gave me a comment where he suggested that I put the Beach Boys' Love You from 1977 against a band called Guru Guru, the self-titled, their 1973 self-titled. And now Guru Guru is a band I hadn't heard of. They're a krautrock group that I had not heard of. And I went, okay, so I looked it up, and I already knew what the Beach Boys' Love You cover looked like, but then I pulled up the Guru Guru album cover, and I thought, I don't know about this one. Well, here you go. I'm going to show them to you now, over here. That's the covers. I'm going to show. I'm not doing those two, but I'm going to show them to you anyway, because maybe you agree with Mordant Films. Maybe you think they're a good and proper twin album cover idea, but I don't know. So when I was looking up Guru Guru's self-titled, I did actually discover an album by them that does indeed have a good and proper twin that cannot be denied. So what we have here is Judas Priest's Rock-A-Rolla from 1974. It's right here, isn't it? Is it right here? Okay, right. Got to keep track of where things are. It's right there. Okay. And that goes up against, well, Guru Guru's Tango Fango album. Is that what it's called? Tango Fango from 1976. Okay? Now, yeah, come on. That is not to be denied. So, this is Judas Priest's debut album from 1974 on Gull Records. Recorded totally live in the studio, and it's definitely a little proto-Priest, I guess you could say. It doesn't really have fully the metal sound, kind of, but it's also a little proggy and a little, I don't know, a little kind of bell-bottom rock in a way. But now, that album didn't sell particularly well at the time, and it didn't really do that well, at least until after Priest broke in the early 80s. But when Priest did in fact break through in the early 80s, Gull Records reissued the first two albums, and, well, they changed the covers, and this is the alternate cover for Rock-A-Rolla. Yeah, now see, when this cover came out, the word started to spread around that Gull had to change the cover because of legal wrangles or whatever with Coca-Cola. But I don't know, I think really that it's actually that it was 1982 or 83 or whatever, and it was, metal was in, and that new cover was kind of more in keeping with what their current image was. I think they were kind of trying to make the record look attractive to people who were buying stuff like Screaming for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith and stuff like that. Now, the sleeve concept was done by a guy named John Pache, who I think is from the Gull graphics team. I looked it up on the back of the album cover, and it just says sleeve concept by John Pache, comma, Gull Graphics. So he probably was an on-staff graphic design guy for the label. The cover photography for the front was Bryce Atwell. Now, the Guru Guru album, Tango Fango, that's from 1976, and like I said, I discovered this one purely, when I was looking at the self-titled album from '73, and I didn't even have to, it was just blasted out at me like, well, okay, I know what album this looks like. And I don't really have any information on this record because, well, for one thing, I certainly don't have a copy of it. But also, there isn't really, Guru Guru is just one of those groups. It isn't like Priest. There's a lot of information about Priest online. Guru Guru, not so much. All I know is that record looks just like Rock-A-Rolla. And it was only a couple years later. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, so coming up next, we have quadruplets. Yeah, no mere twin action here. We have quadruplets. And if I'm being honest, there are probably actually way more than 4 of these out there somewhere. But there's only 4 that I really am aware of. Maybe some of you people in the comments can let me know of even more of this design that's out there, because I'm sure it is. But anyway, let's get on to it. First of all, we have, from 1969, The Four Seasons with Genuine Imitation Life Gazette. Okay? I'm sure you now know where I'm going with this. Okay, so from 1972, Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick. Which, of course, takes us to later in 1972, well, only like 3 months later in 1972, with John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Sometime in New York City. Which also then leads us to 1978's Strange Company by Wendy Waldman. Right? Yeah, I mean, obvious. I mean, this is all very obvious, and I'm sure a number of you people watching have been like, oh yeah, I've noticed that one. How could you not? But, well, anyway, so the Four Seasons album we'll start with here. The Genuine Imitation Life Gazette album is sort of their attempt to get hip. Finally in 1969 they kind of got with the program and tried making, I don't know, an album that's kind of would have been more timely in 1967. I mean, it's a bit of a psych pop album with songs about war and racial tension and stuff. And, they may have been behind the curve in that regard, but as far as I know, this is the earliest album cover that has this design, so they were ahead of some heavy hitters, at least as far as the album cover idea is concerned. Now, Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick, I have a little bit. I'm actually going to read you a little bit here, a little blurb here, directly from Wikipedia. Okay. Okay. According to Wikipedia, the original LP cover was designed as a spoof of a 12 by 16, 12-page small town. Let me see if I'm reading this correctly. A spoof of a 12 by 16, 12-page small town English newspaper entitled The St. Cleeve Chronicle and Linwell Advertiser, with articles, competitions, and advertisements lampooning the typical parochial and amateurish journalism of the local English press. Okay? The band's record company, Chrysalis Records, complained that the sleeve would be too expensive to produce, but Ian Anderson countered that if a real newspaper could be produced, a parody of one would also be practical. I agree, Ian. And, yeah, so there you go. And no mention of them ripping off the Four Seasons. Which I'm sure they did, and I'm sure the Jethro Tull wasn't even aware of that Four Seasons album. I think a lot of people weren't, actually. I don't think there's any major hits on that album. But anyway, on to John and Yoko. Of course, this is the album right after John and Yoko moved to New York City, and so they're like in New York mode, and it was in September 1971 that they moved to New York City, and they quickly, of course, got involved with Abby Hoffman, and, began Lennon's political phase, walking around in, army jacket and doing this a lot. But the cover is obviously modeled after the New York Times. I don't know if John was aware of the Jethro Tull album. I suspect that he probably wasn't, because I'm pretty sure that he probably would have nixed the idea had he seen that Jethro Tull had literally just put out the same cover like 3 months before. He probably didn't know about it. Or maybe he just thought, oh, I'm fucking John Lennon. I'm going to put it out, and people are going to think it's my idea. That could be it, because he would think that too. Who knows? But the fourth one in this set of quadruplets is the Wendy Waldman album. Strange Company. Now, Wendy Waldman, she's a singer-songwriter from Los Angeles. She was initially around the late 60s, early 70s, she was in a band called Brindle with Carla Bonoff and Andrew Gold. Yeah. But that broke up, and she issued her first solo album called Love Has Got Me in 1973. And, she had a whole string of really good 70s solo albums, like Gypsy Symphony in 1974, her self-titled Wendy Waldman in 1975, my favorite, The Main Refrain from 1976, and then this album, Strange Company, in 1978. She also wrote and recorded the original version of Don Johnson's Heartbeat. Yes, Heartbeat. Looking for a heartbeat. Yeah, that's a Wendy Waldman song, and the original version is hers. It's the opening track on her 1982 album, Which Way to Main Street. If only I could read. All right. Yeah, so there you go. So I'm sure many of you out there probably know of even more albums that have this exact same cover design. Point them out to me, because I would love to know. Alright, so coming up next, I have two albums that are frighteningly similar, and they are a little frightening, these covers. I don't know. We'll see what you think. Okay, first off I have Colin Blunstone with his great 1972 sophomore solo album, Ennismore. Great album. Great album. If you're a Zombies fan and you haven't heard these early 70s Colin Blunstone solo albums, rush out to get these. They're fantastic. But, there's another album that has a cover that's mighty, mighty similar, and that is This One's For You by Barry Manilow, from 1976. That's a pair of pretty faces, is it not? See, now that's the thing. The Barry Manilow one isn't so bad, but that Colin Blunstone cover, I mean, he should have, I don't know, maybe a little cover up. I don't know what it's. I'm just I don't know what to say about it. It's like I said, these are not pretty pictures. But now, the thing about the Colin Blunstone album that's even more kind of a head scratcher is that this is an alternate cut. This is the alternate U.S. cover. There's actually the original UK cover is this right here. Yeah, a much, much better cover. I mean, it's much, much better and more flattering. I think is that the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's a bit more flattering. For some reason, the U.S. decided that they wanted something that was a little more earthy. I don't know if maybe that's it. I don't know. Anyway, I've always thought that U.S. Colin Blunstone cover was absolutely terrible. But you know what? As terrible as that cover is, the album is fantastic. Now, Ennismore is his 1972 album, but this U.S. version actually came out in 1973. The cover design is by Teresa Alfieri, and the photography is by Steve Campbell. And, the Barry Manilow album, of course, was a giant blockbuster of an album that came out in 1976. Don't lie, you had that album, you bought it. And the cover design and photography is by Lee Gerst. And so, I don't know, two totally different people. We don't have the same person coming up with the graphic design. We don't have the same photographers. When they were designing the Barry Manilow album, they probably weren't aware of the Colin Blunstone album because, unfortunately, it wasn't really a big hit. I mean, it wasn't on most people's radar, which is a damn shame. Because I repeat, I'm going to say it again. You're going to get sick of me saying this. Fantastic album. Barry Manilow. I'm down with Barry. I am down with Barry. I make no apologies for this. No guilty pleasure, because I'm going to tell you right now, no guilty pleasures. If I like it, I'm not guilty. All right, and so, that's that. I don't really have any major insights on these, but except for the covers are really similar, and yeah. Okay, so up next is an album by an artist that I'm a huge, huge fan of, and an artist I have never heard. In fact, I only learned about them when I discovered this cover and noticed how similar it was to the artist that I love. But the artist I love was not the first one to do it. Anyway, the first album of the pair, Manic Frustration by Trouble from 1992. All right, and that is eerily similar to an album that came out a little bit later from 2005 called Dirty Diamonds by Alice Cooper. Yes, I'm a big Alice Cooper fan. And I'm actually a big fan of this album too. This is a great latter-day Alice Cooper album. There's a lot of, when Alice kind of went metal, and then he kind of went into a new metal phase. He went metal, then he went pop metal, then he went into a new metal phase, and most of that stuff I can't get into. But then in the early to mid 2000s, he went through this period, because the thing is, let's face it, Alice is great, but he has done a lot of trend chasing. And in the early 2000s or so, you had the Strokes and all that kind of stuff, and there was a sort of this pseudo garage rock kind of revival of sorts, I guess that's what they called it, or that's what they considered it. And he kind of went along with that, and he made a couple of great records that are guitar rock albums that were decidedly not metal, and there's such great stuff. And Eyes of Alice Cooper from 2003 is the first one of the two, and then the follow-up is this album, Dirty Diamonds, and I think it's a great, great album. There's some stuff on here that almost sounds like Alice Cooper group stuff. I mean, like Sunset Babies All Got Rabies and stuff like that. Sounds like something off of $1 Billion Babies. It has like a Raped and Friesen / No More Mr. Nice Guy kind of vibe. Great, great stuff. I really wish he'd kept making records like this, but I digress. Trouble by Manic Frustration. It's 1992, so it's a 90s record. So I guess we probably already know what it sounds like. That's the thing. I haven't listened to this record. I've just seen the cover. But the front cover illustration is by Jean-Francois Bodevin. Bodevin? I don't know. All right. Trouble themselves are credited with the front cover concept, and the art direction is by Kim Champagne. Now, okay. So the Alice Cooper album, the photography is by Mando Gonzalez, and the art direction and design by Catherine Delaney. Again, totally different names, so it isn't like a situation where you have one photographer or designer who has kind of a style and a vibe. It's just entirely different people coming up with the exact same thing. And I'm sure it's probably just, in this case, this is definitely one of those where I think it's probably just a coincidence, because I seriously doubt Alice Cooper is like, I'm totally going to rip off that Trouble album from 1992. I mean, come on, that's probably not happening. But who knows? Who knows? Okay, so finally we have a pair of albums here with a very, very, very simple design, very, very simple idea, but effective. Maybe independent ideas, of the people who put them together. I don't know. But, first we have Face Value by Phil Collins from 1981. Okay? And we also have Tutu by Miles Davis from 1986. Yeah. I mean, So, anyway, Face Value, of course, comes out in 1981 and is a giant, giant hit. There's no way. I mean, Miles Davis certainly was aware of this album. He certainly has seen the cover. There's no question about that. He had to have. I mean, if he was living under a rock, maybe not. But otherwise, come on. I mean, Miles Davis was always aware of what was going on. He was perfectly aware of all the stuff that was going on around him, all the music, all the culture. He was not living in a tiny little box there. He knew about that album. But on the other hand, I still doubt that he stole the idea. But I don't know. It's a similar thing. Cover photo from the Phil Collins album was done by Trevor Key. Now, as far as I could see, looking through the credits, there's no design credit given for this album, but apparently the idea was Phil Collins' idea. He wanted to symbolize the listener getting into his head. That was his idea for the album cover. Only thing about that, though, is that every single album after that basically has the same idea. Every single album after that is like a close-up of his face. So is every single album supposed to symbolize getting into his head? I don't know. I mean, it was pretty easy, I think, back in the day to design the Phil Collins album cover, because all you had to do was come up with, okay, which close-up is it going to be? Is it going to be straight on? Is it going to be sideways? Is it going to be half and half? Is it going to be black and white? Is it going to be color? Those are the decisions you had to make. Other than that, you pretty much had a template. But Miles Davis, that cover photo was by Irving Penn. The art director is Aiko Ishioka, Aiko Ishioka. And the designer was Susan Welt. Yet again, entirely different people, so not a style thing of a similar, graphic, design company or person or whatever. Just entirely different people who just had the same idea, I guess. I don't know, as always, and every time I do these twin album covers, there's a whole lot of I don't know. Because you know what? I don't know. All I know is that these albums all look remarkably similar, and I don't know, I don't know if they knew it going in. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching. And again, if you have any that are on your radar that I might not be thinking about, let me know down in the comments, because I will certainly put it in the video, and I will certainly give you a shout out, and I won't claim the idea as my own. I will tell the world that you are the one who hipped me to this. All right, so everybody, thank you again for watching the videos. Thank you for everybody who has subscribed. Thank you to all you new subscribers. I mean, I put out a video already thanking you, but you know what? I thank you again. And thank you to everybody who's commenting and liking and all that kind of stuff. And I will see you on Thursday. On Thursday, Crystal Durant and Tommy Von Voigt are going to be here, and we're going to be counting down our favorite singles of 1981. Yeah, we're starting to really get into the 80s now, and I don't know, it's going to be the Tommy show, I think, for the next 8 episodes or whatever. What are you going to do? All right, well, everybody, thank you very much. I'll see you soon.